When you're flight training at a flight school and you have an accident, do you know that you could possibly be on the hook for a $5,000 deductible?
Let's talk about it. Hello, my friends. Welcome back to Late Departure. I'm Adam, and as most of you know, this is my journey to becoming a commercial pilot. And along the way, I'm a super novice at aviation. I don't know very much about it, and I'm always trying to learn more. And fortunately today, a great friend of my instructor, who hopefully is going to become a great friend of mine as well here, Caleb, who is out working at Air1 Insurance, is going to tell me a bit about, the very, very important topic of insurance. Something that we don't talk about very much, but something that we should be very aware of because, as you know in your training, once you start your training, the insurance documents are an extremely important part of your flight. You cannot fly without your insurance. So let's talk a little bit more about this. But before we get started, how about Caleb, would you want to go ahead and just introduce yourself?
Sure, yeah, that'd be great. So I work at a company called Air1 Insurance, and I've also started a channel called Air 101 that we talk about aviation insurance, especially because in Canada, a lot of people are very confused how aviation insurance will react in the event of a loss. So that's why I really want to bring this to others. And I've been doing aviation insurance for coming up on about 11 years. I am a commercial pilot. I fly about 50 hours roughly every year, and I really enjoy the aviation industry. So I'm happy to be here today.
Excellent. And I believe we actually came to know each other through my instructor, Ken. Did you meet him at Pacific Rim as well before? Or?
Actually, I did not meet him at Pacific Rim. I met him at going to the gym. And my old gym trainer knew that I was a pilot, and he said, "Oh, Ken's also a pilot too. You guys might know each other." So, small world.
Perfect. Yeah. And again, Ken mentioned Caleb to myself as well, and the fact that Caleb was starting a YouTube channel, which is really amazing. You have to check it out. I'll leave a link in the description below so you can go and find that. And we'll also probably be doing some more videos in the future here as well. So you'll probably see me a little bit on his channel. And all in all, really, really useful information that I highly encourage you to check out. No matter if you're a local student or an international student, all of these insurance things are going to apply to you when you start your flight training here in Canada.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, thanks for that great introduction, Adam. Really appreciate it.
Oh, no worries. But I thank you so much for talking with me today. And let's just dive right into it here. So I'm a flight student, and for me personally, I don't buy the insurance. It's the flight school that's buying the insurance. But how would this possibly impact me? What do I really need to know as a flight student in terms of aircraft insurance here?
So I'd say definitely one of the biggest things that you need to know is when you're a student and you're going to a flight school is you need to know that if there was an accident, who would actually be covering the deductible. Mm-hmm. Unfortunately, the school that I went to, they actually had a contract and said in that contract, if there was an accident, that I would be paying for this deductible. And they wrote how much that deductible was. Mm-hmm. Because deductibles from flight schools can range from $500, $10,000, $20,000, all depending on sometimes if the aviation flight school wants to get reduced rates, they increase the deductible. But then in the event of a loss, that wouldn't be fair for the student to have to cover some of those larger deductibles. So it's very important before you start flying to check that out.
Yeah, and I definitely remember when I first started my flight training recently, I got those documents and I very quickly just flipped through those documents and just signed the bottom line there. And to be totally honest with you, I have no idea what I got myself into or what I might be liable for. So it's something that I definitely now, knowing this, want to go back and look through all that paperwork I got when I first started to find out more about it. But let's delve into that a little bit deeper here. So how often or in what situations would students be on the hook for paying like a deductible or something like that versus schools? Because it seems like it depends on the insurance policy and it depends on a few different things, right?
Yeah, so whether the student is on the hook is nothing actually to do with the insurance company themselves. It's just to do with the flight school as to whether they're willing to cover it or not. And the thing is, if a flight school has had a number of accidents, then usually they have a higher deductible. And that can actually scare away students from training at that flight school if the student actually has to pay for that deductible. So this is the case where the flight school would probably want to take and pay for that actual deductible.
Right. And so how could students know about this other than just the paperwork? Is this something that students could ask by email? Could they say, hey, by any chance, could you send me a copy of like maybe the policy that you have, and let me know a little bit more about the insurance? Like, how could they approach this?
Yeah, you wouldn't necessarily just want to ask for the policy, but you definitely could ask what the deductible is, because if they don't want to tell you, then you probably don't want to do your flight training at that school.
Right. Yeah, I just imagine that, just from what I've heard, and we have an international study group, and in that group, a whole bunch of students who are planning to come to Canada. And I know for a lot of them, we're looking at the prices of the schools and all those kinds of things. But it seems like it's going to be very challenging for them to find out what the deductible might be and what have you, just because one of the things that I've learned is that flight schools are not always super honest with what the little details of some certain things. Unfortunately, I think it's just sort of the way it is. Like,
yeah, it's true. Like, we have seen some horror stories where an international student gets here and they paid all their money and realize the flight school is not what they expected. And that's why it's nice, first of all, Adam's doing these videos, helps out with international students, because over the last 11 years of doing aviation insurance, I have seen it where people lost $50,000, $60,000 and they kept the international student here for like a year or two and then ended up going back home without a license.
oh, that's terrible.
So you need to be very careful. So I think if you're able to email, like if you go to the website and email the person on there and just send it out to all the flight schools, whoever is willing to respond, then those ones are that possibly want to do something with you.
And that's typically the case too, like a lot of the schools that take the time to reach out to the students and write detailed responses. Because one thing that happened when I first went to search for flight schools is I emailed almost every flight school. Most of them gave me a formula response, just cut and paste out of their procedures or things like that. Some of them actually took the time to respond to me, and that's something you want to look out for. Yeah. But in terms of what kinds of accidents, so going into sort of the accident side here, hopefully it doesn't happen to you guys or anyone here, but in the case of an accident, so what kinds of things would we be looking at in that sense? Because I'm not sure what the breadth of different accidents are.
Yeah, so that's definitely a great question. The biggest thing is when you're going to a flight school, you want to make sure that they actually have full coverage, which is called all risk flight and ground. And under my videos on Air 101, there's actually a video that talks about that. And the reason why you want full coverage is then if, for example, if you have a gear up landing, hard landing, all of these will potentially be covered under that policy. But if they just buy liability only and no hull coverage on the aircraft, you crash it, you're most likely going to be on the hook for it. So it's really not worth it. So it just depends on different variables, what policies you can buy to help protect you while you're also flying in a flight school. So,
well, that's a different thing. So are there other things that students can do to protect themselves for their flight training in addition to, I guess, whatever coverage the flight school has? Or is that a step that students need to consider taking, or how would that work?
Yeah, so normally, like I just said, make sure the flight school is all risk flight and ground. That's your first and foremost thing to do.
I'll put a card on the top of the video here that links to your video on your channel about that, so people can click right there.
Awesome. So, and then the second thing is you can buy like renter's insurance where it can potentially cover the deductible. But I personally don't normally sell this policy, only for the fact is if you were to have a loss, you have to be negligent. And of course that term is very confusing. So let's just break that down for half a second. If you're flying at a flight school and you go crash that aircraft, then you're negligent. But let's say you're flying along and a bird strike happens. You didn't cause that bird strike to happen, so you're not negligent. So technically you would not be covered under this renter's insurance.
Right.
And the flight school would actually have to use their insurance, and if they use their insurance, then you may have to cover their deductible.
Right.
So there's a lot of loopholes. Obviously having the renter's insurance is just a second layer of protection that can help you out. Okay. So I talked about that really fast, but hopefully you can watch it a couple of times.
Definitely. One
thing I also want to say is that renter's insurance, if you get the correct policy, can also cover the deductible in the event of a loss.
Which again could be anywhere from $500 to $5,000, $10,000, something like that.
And you can actually choose the level amount that you want when you're buying that policy.
Yeah. So it is another good thing to think about, again, just to cover yourself, because actually myself recently, as some of you know, who've seen some of my recent videos, my apartment flooded. And of course, thankfully, I have insurance, which helped cover all of that. But, if I didn't have that, insurance is something that you don't really want to have until you have to have it, kind of thing. So it's good to have, it's.
And that's why, like, even when you see on my channel, the biggest thing I always say is, like, whether you're a flight school or you're an international student coming here and you want to buy a non-owned policy, you're paying a lot of money for a single piece of paper. And you want to make sure that that piece of paper actually covers you in the event of a loss. Obviously,
Definitely.
you never want to really use it, but when it does happen, that's what you want.
You'll be happy you have it.
Yeah,
Right?
yeah, exactly. That's.
Are there any other things, like any specific types of accidents? So you talked about like negligence and things like that, but are there any like non-negligent accidents or something besides like bird strikes or something that might be any other kind of
Yeah, I
thing?
guess like if you're in the aircraft and a windstorm came by,
Right.
you're non-negligent, right? So
Yeah.
that's where that insurance would have to fall under the flight school. And also, in saying all this could vary from case to case. So sometimes you could be negligent, sometimes you cannot. But one thing I actually thought we could just quickly talk about when I was, just because of an example I had just the other day, where I found out that the individual actually never bought rental coverage on the aircraft policy because the insurance company slipped in that they were going to charge a large amount of money for that rental. So if you notice on the certificate insurance, when you go on flying, you're looking through all the documents that you normally need to, where it says under commercial use, try and make sure that it says including rental, because you're going to want to rent that aircraft out, right? Especially when you're not with your flight instructor, or if you go get your license and you're trying to get your commercial license, you're going to be renting it.
That's right.
So imagine you go and do all your flight school training at the single flight school and find out that after you solo, you can't rent their aircraft.
Right.
And so that's something hopefully the flight school will tell you that they have. Yeah.
Yeah. And I get the feeling also that it's something that, I can see that you've got the schools that you're covering well covered and everything like that, but not every school has that coverage, right? So it's something we want to be careful of, because it's not. Unfortunately, I guess you're not covering all of Canada yet, but who knows? Maybe one day in the future you'll keep expanding out.
I hope so. Like, we do write a lot of flight schools across Canada, but sometimes what happens is that a flight school might be with a non-aviation broker where they really don't know, but they're just trying to help out a friend, and that happens to own this business and also a flight school. So then they're like, oh yeah, I'll just help them out, but then they don't actually go through it. A lot of times when I go through the policy wordings, I realize that they're missing a lot of coverage that not only would affect the flight school, but would also affect the students seriously. And you, while doing your flight training, do not want to have a serious financial loss. It could set you back with your training and also in life.
Oh, definitely. Well, since flight training right now can go anywhere from, I've heard some people say 60,000 all the way up to more than $100,000, any kind of financial loss in the tens of thousands of dollars from some kind of accident or something like that would definitely put a damper in your training, right?
Exactly. So I think those are the main things, like just what we talked about, is checking out the deductible, checking out what the flight school requires, whether for you to pay the deductible, or are they going to cover the deductible, or are you going to share the expenses of the deductible, and then also buying possibly a renter's package that may cover that deductible or a certain amount of haul value for the aircraft itself, and then also making sure that the school has rental coverage for the aircraft. I'd say those are the main ones that you want to look out when you're going to train at a certain flight school.
For sure. That sounds like really great advice, and something definitely, like I said, a lot of us really need to look into insurance a lot more seriously and consider, the risks of it, but also that you could ultimately protect yourself better by knowing about all this information. And really, it's something I had no idea about, and I'm really grateful, Caleb, for you coming out and spending the time with me to explain all of this. Again, I'm super new to aviation, and your experience is definitely very valuable, and thank you so much.
Awesome. Yeah, and I just briefly want to say, like, obviously, aviation insurance is not the most fun topic. Honestly, as all aviation insurance brokers, we really don't know how we got here and doing this type of job. But then after doing it for so long, we actually care about our customers and all these student pilots and flight schools. So just make sure you're covered properly and go through those documents.
For sure. And like Caleb mentioned, I know insurance is not the most exciting thing in the world here, but Caleb is doing an amazing job on his YouTube channel, just making it cool, making it interesting, really beautiful thumbnails, great graphics, and he's doing some skits and stuff these days, which is really great. So I definitely enjoy watching those. I highly encourage you to check out his channel and learn more about aviation insurance, because it's not just about owners. This is also about student pilots. This is about anyone who flies, really.
Yeah, international students, everyone. So yeah, thanks for that. And also Adam's doing a great job, super motivating, helping out international students, but also not just international students. Like the students here, they need to know when they're starting, they have no idea where to go. So it's nice to have some videos to watch. So you're doing a great job.
Well, I definitely didn't know about half of this stuff. And also check out Caleb's channel in the future. Already Caleb was mentioning earlier that there might be some talks of some videos coming out about potentially how you might want to, or how you might be able to purchase a plane for
like as an
training.
Like if you're an international student and you're coming here, how you can purchase a plane, because it's very, very difficult in ways like that. So I'm gonna have the research thoroughly laid out for you, so it's something that you definitely can look forward to in the future.
Yeah, and this is something that definitely comes at a very good time, considering the fact, like we've talked about before, that so many schools right now are full, and I know a lot of international students are trying to find a different way that they might be able to attempt to go at training. And right now, as far as I know, buying a plane is something that has only really been an avenue for local students. That'll be a very interesting video to watch, and I look forward to it.
Awesome. Thanks.
All right, well, thank you very much. And all of you, thank you very much for once again joining me here on my late departure. I hope you're all staying very healthy and happy and safe during this time. If you're flying, have fun, fly your best. Check out Caleb. He's going to be flying a lot more as well. You'll see him in his channel there. And remember, it's never too late. See you next time.